Hello everyone, today we're going to go through the IXL assignment TDA, solving proportions. First, let's refresh our memory on what a proportion is. A proportion is a statement that says two ratios are equal to each other. Remember, a ratio is the comparison of two quantities, so the comparison of two amounts of something. For this first one here, 1/3, there is one yellow circle for every 3 circles. That's our ratio, 1 to 3. Well, that is equivalent to our second ratio, 2 to 6. There are 2 yellow circles out of every 6. Because these ratios are equal, they are equivalent, that means they are set up to be a proportion. Now, a lot of times with proportions, when we're asked to solve them, it's because there is an unknown amount. So if we know that the definition of a proportion means our two ratios are equal, they're equivalent, we can use that knowledge to find a missing piece of information. And in this case, when something's missing, when we don't know its value, that's when we use variables. So the variable, the letter X, is our unknown quantity. It's what we're trying to find. To find that, because our two ratios, our fractions, are equivalent, we can use cross multiplication. So we multiply our diagonals, we multiply straight across. So 7 times 3 here in green is set equal to our other diagonal, x times 14. Once we do that multiplication and solve, we come down to the very bottom here and see that x equals 1.5, or 1 5/10. If we kind of compare this to a real world scenario, it could be, you were told that it costs $14. To buy 14 apples, it costs $3. So how much would it cost if you wanted to buy 7 apples? $1.50. So it can be used to find those equal values if you want to get more or less of something. All right, let's switch on over to IXL so we can practice this cross multiplication. All right, here we have our first problem here. We want to solve for G in the proportion. So we have the proportion 15/10 is equal to 9 over G. And we want to find what G equals, so this becomes a true proportion, so the values are equivalent. First step is we want to write it down. This is definitely something where I encourage you guys to have some paper and a pencil so you can write down either some or all of the steps to make sure that you multiply the right things and that you don't mix up and confuse any of your numbers. So 15/10 is equal to 9 over G. To help us find G when we have a proportion, and I know it's a proportion because two fractions are set equal to each other, we can use cross multiplication. So we're going to multiply across, multiplying our diagonals. So first, I'm going to multiply 15 times G. Well, 15 times G is just 15G. That is set equal to our other cross multiplication, our other diagonal. Now we're going to multiply the other direction. So see, it makes like a crisscross. 10 times 9. Well, 10 times 9 is 90. We are now left with a one-step equation. There are two different ways you can go about finding the value for G. The first option is to kind of just do guess and check, like do it in your head. So say, okay, 15 times G, so 15 times what equals 90? That might work with some numbers, but 15 and 90 are a bit too large. I don't know off the top of my head what times 15 is going to give me 90. Therefore, I'm going to do the actual process. I'm going to do the actual steps and solve for G. Remember, when we solve equations, we always do the inverse, so the opposite operation. So if I have 15 times G, what is the inverse? What is the opposite of multiplication? Division. So to find what G is, we do that inverse, we do the opposite. I'm going to divide both sides by 15. Because another thing to remember about equations is they have to stay balanced. They have to stay equal. So whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Well, 15 divided by 15 is 1, because anything divided by itself is 1. So we're just left with G. And now we need to do 90 divided by 15. So 90 divided by 15 is 6. So 6 is the value for G that would complete this proportion, that would make these two fractions equivalent, make them equal. All right, there we go. Let's try another one. This time we have Z over 12 is equal to 5/3. So once again, not only do I know it's a proportion because the directions tell me, but when I look at the problem, two fractions are said equal to each other. That means it's a proportion. And I can solve proportions by cross multiplication. So we're going to multiply straight across, or not straight across, we're going to multiply across like with our diagonals. So Z times 3 would just be 3Z. And that is set equal to our other diagonal. So now we're going to multiply the other way across. 5 times 12, which would be 60. All right, we just got one more step. We have 3 times Z, so 3 times something equals 60. Well, to figure out what that something is, we can do a little bit of that backwards thinking, and we're going to do the inverse operation. So it's 3 times Z. The opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we're left with Z. And then what is 60 divided by 3? That would be 20. So 20 is the value for C that makes this a true proportion. It takes a little bit of work, but I think you guys will see that the steps mimic each other each time. You write your problem down, do your cross multiplication, then divide to find your answer. Let's jump up a level, see if we can try a slightly harder one. All right, here we go. The numbers are a bit bigger. We're solving for R this time. So our first fraction is 25/30ths, and that is equal to 10 over R. Even though my numbers are a bit larger, that's okay. The process is still the same. Proportions written down. Now we need to do our cross multiplication. So we're multiplying across our diagonals. R times 25. Can't really do the multiplication, so I just write it down, 25R. And that is equal to our other diagonal. So now we're going to multiply this way. 30 times 10 would be 300. We're left with a one-step equation. We have 25R, so 25 times R equals 300. To find that R, to find that missing value, we're doing the inverse. So the inverse, the opposite of multiplication, is division. We're going to divide both sides by 25. So 25 divided by 25 is 1. We're left with 1R. And then what would be 300 divided by 25? That is 12. So 12 is our missing value for R. Let's jump up another level. Ooh, again, the numbers get larger, but notice that your fractions don't really look any different. Yes, we have bigger numbers, but you have that calculator that you can use. So take a deep breath and know that you can do this, all right? So let's write our problems down. We have 663 over 351, and that's equal to 17 over G. So it's a proportion. Two fractions are equal. We solve that by cross multiplication. So we're going to multiply across our diagonals. 663 times G is just 663G. And then that's equal to your other across. So 351 times 17, definitely using my calculator here. 351 times 17 is 5,967. All right, one more step, and that is to divide, because we have 663 times G. So to undo that, to figure out what G is, we're going to divide both sides by 663. 663 divided by 663 is 1. So we're just left with one single G. And then 5,967 divided by 663. Whew, that's a mouthful. Turns out to be a nice small number, 9. So all of that work just to get the nice itty bitty number of 9. Now let's talk about something real quick. I want to look at my answer here and see if that makes sense. Because I have a pretty large fraction here. And notice that with the fraction, it's an improper fraction. Your numerator, so the 663, is larger than the denominator. Well, if I know they're a proportion, if I know they're equal, that means when I get my answer, it should be set up the same. So I now have a much smaller one, because 17's a lot smaller, but it still needs to be an improper fraction. 17 over 9 fits the bill. So it doesn't guarantee the answer, but it's a nice way to just kind of quickly look and say, all right, does my answer make sense? Does it fit with what I should get? And it does. That's always good to double check that kind of stuff, especially when the answers and the numbers are so large. Okay. All right. So your turn to try it, guys. You got this. Remember your steps. Write the problem down. Do your cross multiplication, and then divide by that number with your variable, and that will give you your answer. All right. Of course, if you need anything, feel free to reach out and your teacher will be happy to help you. Bye.